afternoon. This is Diana Hart from Poplar Village Gardens, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about taking control of your own food and how that is a revolutionary act. We're standing here at the community garden on Walnut Street here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and this community garden was installed to give people the opportunity to grow their own food. Not only are they taking control of their own food, but they are getting things at its peak of ripeness and freshness when the nutritional content is going to be the highest. And that's important, and everyone deserves that. So we are trying to make that available to the people in this neighborhood. Hello there, this is Diana again, and I'm sitting on one of the benches that's facing our art wall. In every area of Poplar Village Gardens, we try to make sure that we have some park-like seating so that people that want to observe the gardening, maybe can't or don't want to participate, have an opportunity to sit and enjoy the activity that's going on around them. This bench would be described in permaculture as like a person space. In permaculture, and since we're trying to do permaculture style, it really wants to make a place for every living creature. That includes people. And one of the things that we're trying to do is make people spaces. And this bench would be an example of that. And also some of the newly mulched pathways, stepping stones through the fruit tree guilds and some of those kinds of things will be our way of expanding and making people spaces in and among this lovely natural environment. I'm standing here, we are in the basement right now. I have the traditional older basement, but in that older basement is a lot of things. You know, I talked earlier about being a revolutionary. I am not much of a confrontationalist. I really don't pick fights, but I do like to do things that are a little off the beaten path. And so when somebody told me that growing your own food was a revolutionary act, that's something that I can really get on board with. One of the things that I have tried to do in order to sustain the harvest, which would extend the revolution into the winter season, is to have different ways of preserving the food that we get, either from the store or from the garden. This is a deep freeze. It holds a whole bunch of stuff, and I like to have at least 3 different ways of preserving food. The deep freeze is one way. We can have it fresh, of course, or we can keep it in our refrigerator for a period of time. One of the things that I started experimenting with when I started expanding the size of the garden was to experiment with lacto-fermentation. Now, that is something that takes place on your countertop, but when you have fermented to the level that you want to ferment, then you need to have a place to store it in order to be able to preserve the probiotics that are contained in the food. This here I got last summer. It is it's all refrigerator, but it can be switched over to all freezer. And in here we've been keeping all of our lacto-fermented vegetables. These were things that I either got from my CSA or things that I have from the garden. And we have used it, of course, it's overflow for the upstairs refrigerator when I make broth, and all of that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm standing here next to, this was the preserved food that I canned in a pressure canner this year. In amongst this are apples, and in some place here we also have broth. I generally will save I debone all the chicken and turkey that I cook, and then I put them in glass jars in the freezer, and then when I'm ready to make broth, I take them all out and put them in the stock pot, make broth, and then I get them in the pressure canner, and then I have them for later use. One of the things that I wanted to let everybody know this week is that on Saturday, the 11th of June, from 10 to 1, we are having a volunteer work day, which includes a worm bin making workshop. you can attend, and for $10 which is the cost of materials, you can make your own worm bin, and I will send you home with free worms. This is our indoor worm bin. We kind of decided to just keep them inside because the temperature outside fluctuates a little bit too much, but we just have 2 totes, and let me see what we got in here. Oh, the babies aren't crawling around in that one. Let me look and see if we can find another one. There we go. There's some worms in action. One of the benefits is that we can take our compost in the winter and put this in here. It becomes food for the worms, and the worm castings are excellent fertilizer. The other thing is that even if you do overfeed them, the worm tea that lands in the bottom bin can be taken out and diluted. It's got a lot of live microorganisms in it that are good for the plants, and you can dilute that and you can pour it on your house plants, or you can use it in your garden. I'm standing in front of what is the door that goes up a set of stairs to go outside. This was part of the house when we moved in, and what I have done is I have put some insulation at the top. It's got a nice set of doors at the top, and then underneath that insulation on all the steps is a place that we use as a root cellar. That is another way of storing your food. It just makes you a little bit more resilient when you're trying to figure out what to do with all of your crop.